Okay.
Okay, so that is the recording has started now. So we have apologies from Councillor Wheeler and from Amanda Croft. I'll just do a roll call now, if that's okay. Chair.
Here.
Councillor Alex Nicholl.
Here.
Councillor Gregg.
Here.
Angela Scott.
Here.
Ken Milroy.
I'm here.
Murray Main on behalf of Campbell Thompson.
Yes, here.
Susan Webb. I think Susan is expected today.
Yeah, she's maybe just not joined us yet,
Okay.
perhaps.
I'll just carry on. And Councillor Duncan.
Here.
Bruce Facherson.
Yes, I'm here.
Gordon McDougall.
Yep, here.
Paul O'Connor.
Here.
Jonathan Smith.
Here.
Alistair Robertson.
Yes, good afternoon, everybody.
Heather Crabb on behalf of Carl Ledecker.
Yes, here.
Thank you. And David Milne.
Hi, I'm here.
Thank you. That's everyone, Chair.
Okay, thanks very much, Emma, for that. Maybe if I can start by just extending a warm welcome to Paul and Alec, because this is the first meeting that they've attended, so welcome to them, and also to Heather and Murray, who are substituting today. Look forward to your contributions. You're very welcome. Do we have any declaration? I'm sorry, David Milne as well. I shouldn't leave David out. David's here. You'll be aware that Neil Rennick, who was our location director, has stepped down from that post, and David is kindly filling in that role at the moment until it's determined, how that will be filled in the future. So welcome to David today as well. I know it's the first time I think he's using Teams, so we're pleased that he's been able to join us, and I think he'll be able to give us a bit of an update, as you'll see from the agenda at item 2.3. So any declarations of interest, first of all? Yes, Paul, I think, do you have?
Thank you, Chair, and it's lovely to be here. I really appreciate the opportunity. Under page 178, under the community planning budget commitments to ACFO under 3.1, 3.3 and 3.5. I don't believe it would mean I would have to leave the meeting, but I'll take your guidance on that. Okay, that's fine. I wouldn't have thought there would be a need for you to do that, but I'm not sure whether we've got any further guidance from officers around that, Paul, but I think recording the declaration of interest in that respect would be okay. Thank you. I'm not seeing anybody indicating. I should have maybe, Paul's obviously a fay with Teams because he knew about raising your hand. I don't know if everybody is, but in the centre of the screen, if you move your mouse into the centre of the screen, there should be a hand there that you can click on. And that's probably the easiest way if you want to come in and speak. The only difficulty with that is if there's a number of hands raised at the same time, it doesn't actually tell me who's raised their hand first. So don't be angered if you're not called forward first. I'll do my best to keep track of that. Okay. And failing that, if there is any issues with that, there's a chat box which is also within that middle bar where you can click on that and just, if you want to put in there that you would like to speak, I'll try and keep track of that as well. And I'm sure my officers will help.
Could I raise as well? I've put into the box, I don't seem to have the hand option, unfortunately. So I'll try keeping track in the box. So similar to Paul, when we come to the annual budget, obviously the civic forum aspect, as chair of the Civic Forum, if there is a point where yourself or partners would rather I step away for some moments, happy to do that. Also, for full disclosure, I've been working, as many of you know, since the outbreak quite heavily with civil service and various other agencies, but for the purposes of today's meeting, and my involvement with community planning is purely as a Civic Forum community representative. So any views that I bring forward is not speaking in behalf of Scottish or UK government, it's purely from the Civic Forum and communities of Aberdeen.
Okay, thank you for that, Jonathan. I'm sure that's been clarified and we'll take a note of that interest, so thanks for that. Okay, any other declarations? No, I'm not seeing any. Paul, can I just ask you to click to take your hand down? That's it, thanks. Okay, right, that then takes us on to 2.1, which is the minute of the previous meeting, which was held on the 26th of February. It's here for approval. Are we happy to approve the minute? Any issues with the minute? I'm not seeing any indications, so I think that's taken as we're happy to approve. That then takes us on to 2.2, which is the forward business planner, just telling us what we're likely to see at today's meeting and in future meetings, here for noting. Any issues with that, or are we content with that? Okay, not seeing anything, so I think we can move on. Okay, that takes us to 2.3, which is the national update. As I mentioned, David Milne's kindly in attendance today. He was going to give us, I think, just maybe a quick verbal update, and then if anybody has any questions, we're able to raise that. So, David, are you?
Sure, thank you, Chair. Yes, I'll keep this brief. I mean, obviously, this has been such a tumultuous time that I think in all the real life issues that most of the partners around this virtual table today will have been receiving the information that they might have required from Scottish Government in any event, hopefully. So I suppose what I want to do is really just to focus in on a couple of things, and maybe, Chair, if it's okay with you, I can also maybe just say a bit more about the location director role. As you say, in the location director role, Neil Rennick has had to stand down. Just given the way that things are at the moment, I'm not expecting us to have a replacement location director in place soon. So I am very happy to operate as a contact with Community Planning Aberdeen in the meantime. So my responsibilities are I actually handle community planning policy within Scottish Government. I've been away redeployed onto third sector funding issues since the lockdown started, but I've just returned back to the world of public service reform and community planning. But yes, so after this meeting, if any partner needs to get hold of Scottish Government and is struggling to do so, they are welcome to use me as a contact, and I'll be happy to make those connections and build those bridges insofar as I can. So I just thought it was maybe just helpful just to set that up front. I think the only thing from a national issue really just to highlight is, as well as the urgent work that all of us are engaged in and scudding around at 100 miles an hour and responding to this COVID crisis, both the medical crisis and the social economic tail that we're expecting. We're giving a lot of thought now to actually what's the learning to come out of this. And in that context, we within Scottish Government will be very keen to get views from partners individually or from CPPs collectively towards that. And that is something that I've asked each location director to put as a pitch to their respective CPP, so that equally the offer is directed absolutely towards Community Planning Aberdeen. So whether it's formally or if anybody just wants an informal chat, just to get a sense of how's it felt for you, where the real struggles been, what are you most proud of that you've achieved, where's the really powerful things that are happening locally that actually you want to build on, and not just reflecting but also looking ahead. What does this tell us about the challenges that we face now? What's going to help the partners alone and together to deal with this? Where are you likely to find obstacles? Are there particular areas where Scottish Government or others can help? So it's pinpointing someone and all of that. So I'd offered some prompt questions, which I think I've gone into Angela and Michelle separately and to Martin, but I can share those more broadly. Then it's not a test exam, it's just a series of prompts in case they're helpful, just to spark some discussion. More specifically, for those who aren't already aware, the Scottish Government recently launched a social renewal advisory board, which is a short live group with a focus. It's looking at actually what have been the experiences of those with lived experience of poverty and inequality, and how do we drive a fairer, more equal Scotland in the wake of the COVID pandemic. As I say, as a short live group, probably concluding its work around November time. It was just launched in June, and the board met for the first time, I think it was last week or the week before. It's got a wide-ranging representation across public services and civic Scotland, including, as you would expect, a number of representatives representing sections of Scottish society that have tend to be most at risk, and equalities groups. The work will probably have two phases. So there's most immediate pressing work that's coming on at the moment, which could potentially inform thinking that ministers might have for the next programme for government. So the statement of forthcoming government policy, which will probably be launched in early September. And then there's more kind of medium-term considerations, and the thinking on that will happen during September and October. So what I can do, if it's helpful, is to provide details of members of that group. And if anyone has thoughts or feelings that they want to fire in, they can either do it direct to me or colleagues within Scottish Government, or they can do, if they have links with other members of the group, of the board, then they're welcome to do that directly with them. But I suppose this is just trying to emphasize the point that actually this is a real learning time for all of us. We're all in unparalleled waters now, so we're on a journey together, and I think it's fair to say that we within Scottish Government, I think it's fair to say, are very much in listening mode as well as doing mode just now.
Sorry, David, were you finished there?
And that's it. So unless there are questions I'd have, sorry, my apologies.
Okay, no, it's fine. I don't have you on my screen. That's why. So I wasn't quite sure if you were finished or not.
I wasn't sure whether I should put my screen up. It would shock a number of people, I think.
I think we all feel that way when we see ourselves. Thank you very much for that, David. I think it was helpful that the clarification around the location director, and we thank you for saying that you'll act as the contact for us until that's determined finally. So that's helpful. You'll be aware that we've got a report on the agenda today, the socio-economic rescue plan, and that's obviously our reaction to the current situation that we're in, and how we see in Aberdeen we can move forward. And we've made a conscious decision to embed that within the community planning partnership. and the structures that we have within community planning, because we obviously feel that that's the best way in which we can deliver on some of the things there. So that's our initial reaction, short-term reaction to the situation we find ourselves in. But I think members will be pleased about the position that Scottish Government's taking about, taking information from various places in Scotland in order to try and shape up policies that might be coming forward. And I'm sure that we'll want to play our part fully in that. So I think it would be helpful, as you mentioned, about the advisory group on the social renewal aspects. If we could have details of the membership of that, I think that probably would be helpful for people as well. But I'll maybe open up for any questions people might have had on what you've said, or anything else, I suppose, that they may feel you could maybe provide some information on. So just looking to see if we've got anybody that's got any questions. I'm looking in my chat box. Yes, Jonathan, would you like to come in?
Sure, thank you. So it's exciting to hear the Social Renewal Advisory Board having had its first meeting. And I think as Councillor Lang has indicated, a lot of our thoughts now turning towards how do we regenerate some of what has fallen behind or has taken up place in the background of where our focus has had to be and will continue to be likely for some time, which is that first and foremost health perspective, followed perhaps, at least in my view, closely with the economic side of things. Something we may well be coming back to, I expect, in today's meeting, but I was also interested to see from a national perspective, either as part of Scottish Government's work or in what the board is looking at, are we also asking how we can keep going, not just renewing and reclaiming what has been lost? How do we keep going some of the really innovative ways in which both public services, but from the civic forum's perspective, and in particular communities, have adapted, shifted their focus, found new ways of working, and oftentimes have said to our public services, here's where support would be useful. But in a lot of this, we are happy to be the ones doing it, whether it is prescription pickups, telephone calls to help people remain social and interactive, mental stimulation, well-being, all the way to the more formal side of that of repurposing resilience groups, for example, that were initially set up for natural environmental disasters towards what is very much a health and socio-economic pandemic. So yes, looking at renewal, but has there been any national thought yet as to how we keep these grassroots innovations that have come forward, particularly the humanitarian side of it? How do we keep that going after, hopefully, this pandemic has passed?
Thanks, Jonathan. I think that's a really good question. So, David, do you have any thoughts on that?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Jonathan. And I think it's a really good point. I mean, my own kind of reflections on that from what I've seen is that I think there are a couple of elements to this. One is about recognizing some of the real positives that have happened, and particularly the speed at which communities, community groups, third sector organisations and public services have reacted in the face of this crisis. And it's brought, it seems to me anyway, services and people together far more effectively than my old day job of proclaiming the merits of the Christie Commission report for 9 years did. So I think there's an awful lot of good stuff that's been happening through need lately that we need to capture and to build on. At the same time, there are real risks and challenges that are new, including fatigue and possible burnout on the part of people who've been involved, possibly a sense of feeling just burned by the experience of having to deal with this. And also, I suppose, as we get into longer term crisis, how or challenge is, how do we ensure that we keep an open perspective rather than focusing on the things that we've done previously? So that flexibility, that responsiveness that Jonathan talks about is, I think, absolutely critical. And I mentioned Christie before, but I think there's something from Christie that is important to draw out, which was, since 2011, the Christie report has challenged public services to work cohesively with and for communities to strengthen communities' own resilience and empowerment, and to strengthen the support and ultimately community well-being. And I think there's such pressing lessons that we can learn from the experiences of the last few months, and that will continue, that we should learn from this. I realize I'm talking in very general terms here, but that's because actually I think the discussion is of that general nature. So we're not talking about specific actions yet, although that will come, but there's a lot of elements that I think we need to bring to bear in discussions, and I'm confident that they will fall within those.
Thank you, David. Jonathan, did you have another question? Or
I did, if that's okay, and
yes.
Maybe follows on from that, was also to, in looking to those specific actions, again, we are probably not yet at the detail or the deliverable stage. Something I'd wanted to raise more perhaps for consideration than anything else for us as a community planning partnership, and how we link with the offering and the support that's available nationally, is that just before maybe February this year, I remember we were just beginning to talk about what some of the key themes from the Scottish National Investment Bank might look like on a regional or indeed at a local basis, how it would reach into communities looking at, for example, which is very limited right now, if not impossible, person-to-person banking, matching up with the international scale of investments and bonds and sector-wide support. What I wanted to raise just now is that I think a key aspect of the National Investment Bank is that from day one, as a concept, it has looked not only to economic performance, but making sure at each stage, and in some ways the priority being that more humanitarian, socio-economic aspect, making sure that people come with it and that its benefits reach people and don't limit itself to further success at only a certain stage of the market, but is genuinely inclusive for everybody. And I wondered if that might be one among many tools that we have, financially or otherwise, that as we're discussing this economic regeneration, that we continue to have health, well-being, quality of life as part of that discussion, rather than seen as something separate.
Thanks, Jonathan. David, did you want to come back on that? Or?
Thank you, and thank you for the question as well. I don't think there's very much specific I can make on it. It's a point I absolutely take and I can feed in. It does chime with me with some of the public announcements that Scottish ministers have been making lately about the need for investment for Scotland to deal with the crisis. That obviously leads into kind of more political issues that I'm not going to deal with. But I think it also chimes very strongly with expressions that the First Minister has made on a number of occasions now, before this crisis began, about the importance of a well-being economy. And actually, the success of economies is only as great as its ability to achieve well-being across the communities within the current country. Those are just kind of general observations, but I think there's an important general point there, and I'll be happy to feed back to our colleagues dealing with the SNIB. I was speaking with a colleague earlier today, actually, so I can follow that up with him.
Thanks for that, David. Jonathan, are you finished?
Yes, thank you. I think, as we've said, very much a horizon scanning, setting the scene at this stage. And I'm sure as we go through today's meeting and into the weeks and months ahead, we'll begin to draw out some specific and deliverable actions from that. But that's really helpful for now. Thank you.
Thank you, Jonathan. I've got Gordon would like to ask a question.
Thank you, Chair. Just a brief one. I was just thinking from the Scottish Government's point of view as well, it's probably worth referencing the work that Benny Higgins has been doing as the Chair of the Advisory Group in Economic Recovery, because his report was published, just over a week ago or something, and I know it relates to item 3.1 when we're talking about the socio-economic agenda, but I think there's a lot of material in that, and obviously a lot of action still to come out of it that's just worth bearing in mind as the CPPs, and so we see how that unfolds. I just wondered if colleagues haven't seen that. I'm sure many have, but if they haven't, it probably is a document worth referencing.
Thanks for that, Gordon. I think you're right. It's it was just published last week, I think it was. So I'm sure members will have maybe had an opportunity to see some of the media around it, but maybe not read it in detail. But it is certainly worth us making sure that we're familiar with what's in there. Is there any other questions? I'm not seeing anybody else indicating at the moment. Okay, thank you very much then, David. That was really helpful, and we look forward to communicating with you in the weeks and months ahead in order to make sure that we're shaping up and we can provide the information that you require to feed into government as well.
Thank you, Chair.
Okay, right, that does take us on now to 3.1, which is the socio-economic rescue plan, which was went through urgent business committee yesterday at council. Richard Sweetnam's here with us, who was the author of the report. And Richard, do you want to maybe just give the committee a little bit of an update of where we are, and then we can maybe open up for any questions people might have?
Sure. Thank you, Chair, and thank you, committee, for having me to your meeting. Yes, as the Chair said, yesterday, Aberdeen City Council approved what you have in front of you today unanimously at its urgent business committee. Just by way of introduction, I want to briefly touch on the background to the plan and the report you have, the approach we took in developing it, and then just some matters around its implementation. So when I rewind to the 23rd of March and the initial lockdown period beginning, as an officer of the council, I was involved in a kind of business resilience group that was set up in terms of really sharing information around the lockdown and the implications of it. And the focus initially was on information, advice and guidance to businesses and employers. Then the focus was on getting the business grant schemes out through the door. And to date, Aberdeen City Council has supported around £23 million of grants to 2,000 businesses in the city. However, very quickly, we were seeing that the impact of lockdown and COVID-19, in parallel with a decline in oil prices, was having a much wider impact on people and place as well as economy. And in terms of the data, and of course, economic data never coincides with the actual current situation, but the timely data we were looking at, very quickly we're seeing significant increases in universal credit applications. So in the April to May period, about an 82% increase, some 14,500 applications in the city. And I guess when we drill down to that in more detail, it was right across wards in the city, so not just in specific priority areas. We were then, through Skills Development Scotland, we were reviewing the Partnership Action for Continuous Employment data, and this is where an employer must inform the Scottish Government where they're putting more than 20 people on risk of redundancy. And so we've seen about 3,000 such notices of redundancies in the period since March. And when I look at the companies involved and the employers involved, it's not just an energy sector. This is right across the board in terms of employers. And so the wider impact on people and communities, this was corroborated by the increase inquiries and approaches to Aberdeen City Council in terms of school meals, council tax support, and the impact was really across the board. And in conclusion, it was really targeting, it was more likely that young people, low earners, lone parents, disabled people were going to be disproportionately worse affected. So we took all of these data and brought it into our system, and we did a number of internal workshops with officers in the council. So about 60 officers contributed to the plan as you have in front of you. And then we tested some of the initial findings with external partners as we went through it. So the plan is appendixed, and I should just say its focus is very much on rescue, and therefore the priority actions within the current financial year. And we've developed the plan under the headings of business, people and place. And I guess when I think back to other plans that I've been involved with over my professional career, what I would observe about this one is that under the people theme, it picked up some of these wider impacts, and therefore it's not just focused on employability, skills and those types of responses, but very much focused on the health and well-being aspects that were touched on earlier as well. So, you know, of course, I'll take some questions on that in due course. Just on the implementation, I think the proposed governance and the chair said that, you know, bringing it in and aligning and sitting it within the community planning Aberdeen structure. As we're doing the work, the proposal, the implementation, it reflects the structures that exist within community planning Aberdeen and the outcome improvement groups in particular. But it also reflects the progress that you've made on the local outcomes improvement plan as well. And I think to hit the ground running in terms of implementation, it's a great resource to be able to draw on these networks that exist within the community planning structure. And in terms of implementation, we have merely added some employers or businesses into the mix around some of the actions. But the framework in place through the community planning structure should help actual implementation and hitting the ground running, as I say. So the plan is probably a foundation towards recovery and as the city emerges from lockdown. And by coincidence, if nothing else, I think the plan also reflects the work of the Economic Advisory Board that Gordon was alluding to. And in particular, that focus on skills and employability, young people, and the role of the college and the universities going forward. So in conclusion, the uncertainty in terms of the economy and the impact of COVID-19 certainly remains. We don't know yet whether we've had a single hit in terms of lockdown or whether or not there could be double hits going forward. So that uncertainty remains, but I hope the plan does provide some clarity in the short term in terms of what actually needs to be done. And as I say, I'm hopefully be able to answer any questions you have.
Thanks very much for that, Richard. I think that's helpful. I've got a couple of hands. First one's Sarah, and then I'll take Ken.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you also to Richard and his team for all the work that's been done on this. I think it's a really impressive plan, and I think it gets into one place the kind of headline actions that need to be taken to promote recovery and renewal in the city. We're talking though about how it today, specifically how it relates to the work that the Community Planning Board has oversight and governance of. And I note that you're going to set up this new group, a new community planning group. It's on page 32 of the report. a short life working group, the implementation group for the socioeconomic plan. Where it doesn't make it clear to me though where the results of the actions are going to then go to. Are they going through the partners' own structures? Is something going to come back to us as a board? The reason that I think this is important is because I suspect we have a whole new baseline for judging our LOIP stretch targets given what's happened with COVID. Some of the kind of environmental things, some of the kind of health and well-being indicators may have improved. Quite a lot of the health and well-being indicators and certainly the economic indicators look like they've got substantially worse. But I'd be very interested to know how we are going to track progress as a community planning partnership on the priority actions that are detailed in the plan. And my second question is really about the timing of actions and how the actions in the socioeconomic plan relate to the LOIP charters that we are approving. We've got a report later on in the agenda where quite rightly a lot of the LOIP charter work and improvement projects have been halted because of COVID. That's obviously a resource issue. Is the intention that those projects are put on hold until we've implemented the actions under the socioeconomic plan, or is it the intention that we will run both at the same time? And I'd refer back to my point about new baselines for the long-running LOIP work as well.
Thanks for that, Sarah. I mean, there's quite a lot in there. Michelle was actually going to do a little bit on showing us that transition bit and how it will lead into the refresh of the LOIP, this work. Now, I didn't bring her in before because I thought Richard obviously had covered a bit of ground there and people maybe wanted to ask questions. But I'll bring Richard in on some of that, but maybe the work that Michelle was going to talk about might help to answer some of that as well, Sarah. Okay, Richard.
So in terms of the first question and effectively the question around monitoring progress, the report does instruct officers to report twofold. One to the council's own governance, to the City Growth Resources Committee, but also to provide updates, for me to provide updates to the Community Planning Aberdeen board on a regular basis. So I'd imagine that this probably, you know, in operational terms, this is probably going to be a standing agenda item for the rest of the financial year. In terms of the timing of the actions, I think Michelle has already done a piece of work where she's tried to overlay the actions in the rescue plan to the priorities in the LOIP. And I think there is a lot of alignment there anyway. So, you know, I wouldn't be able to say whether something goes on hold or not, but I was very pleased that there was that alignment. But I think Michelle might have more detail on that. I don't know.
Yeah. I'll bring Michelle in on that charter question because she would be best placed to talk about that situation. So Michelle, could you maybe give us an update on that?
Yeah, I'll just share my screen. So hopefully you're able to see that clearly. I will talk through what you're seeing on the screen, if not. This is our route map to the refreshed LOIP. So obviously during the consultation of the Socioeconomic Rescue Plan, there's been various discussions about the link between that plan and our LOIP and our improvement work. So I prepared this in anticipation of those questions coming up today. What you're seeing on the screen is starting from this month where we are. One of the key documents on the agenda, we have our annual outcome improvement report for 1920, and I think that's been a really useful document. We'll come to that on the agenda, just to be able to assess what we did manage to achieve before COVID kind of struck, and it gives us that foundation for where we'd got to as a partnership and possibilities for improvement. We've also got the Socio-Economic Rescue Plan, which is, as Richard has explained, is our kind of immediate response to the situation. And another item on the agenda, we've got our Aberdeen Outcomes Framework, which is all the data that we will be looking at as a partnership to understand the impact that our LOIP and our improvement work is having on the broader population and against our indicators. In terms of where that takes us into a refreshed LOIP, that socio-economic rescue plan is a 1-year plan. And I think what it does is it does set the direction, it does that initial thinking of where our priorities lie for the partnership over the coming months. And as Richard said, there's a lot of alignment already with the work of the LOIP. I think those priorities are still very relevant, and you can see that reflected in those 3 themes within the socio-economic rescue plan. So it does offer some direction about where we think the priorities lie. I think what we would want to take to the next board meeting is, having engaged more closely with our outcome improvement groups on that socio-economic rescue plan, we really need to look at what we had scheduled to come forward to the board in terms of our improvement projects and scheduling of project charters, and just to do some sense checking against that now, thinking about what capacity we've got, the impact that COVID-19 has had, and those areas which are very obvious that we would want to prioritise. And that will mean, in some areas, bringing forward the charters that had been scheduled to come to the partnership. What that means is, from September, we would want to continue with those improvement projects. Now, some of those will really be so closely aligned to the socio-economic rescue plan that really the work of that short life working group will be to review the progress that we're making with those improvement projects, and also offering some support to accelerate that where it's needed. But there are other areas in the LOIP which may not feature in the socio-economic rescue plan that we decide as a partnership that are still current and relevant priorities that we do have capacity for, and that we're indeed committed to taking forward. So there's a piece of work that needs to be done to review that programme, to sense check it, and bring that back to you in September so that you can have sight of that and are agreeing with essentially a reprioritisation of the work. Again, throughout, always being mindful of the latest data we've got in our outcomes framework to ensure that we're responding to anything that we're seeing changing in the population. As Richard says, I know his plan is to report regularly, indeed potentially to every meeting of the board, on progress with that socio-economic rescue plan. But what I'm thinking is, by the end of the year, we will be in a position where we can take a kind of 6-month review of how we are progressing that plan and the progress we've made. I think that will be really important at that point to understand how much more work has to be done, with a view to starting to think about how we transition into a refreshed LOIP. So we won't want these 2 plans to exist in parallel in the longer term, but essentially they will come as one. And what we're thinking in terms of timescales just now is, in a year's time, that our refreshed LOIP would take account of anything additional that's in the socio-economic rescue plan that we would want to take forward into the longer term. So that 6-month review will be a really important check on the progress we've made and how realistic that is. With a view to, at the beginning of 2021, starting a bit more in-depth engagement with partners to consider that progress, to be reviewing the data, and just at that point to have a clearer idea of where our priorities do lie and what capacity we have as a partnership to take them forward. I think it is useful to take that time to do it so that we're not reacting to the current situation, which still feels quite chaotic. I think in 6 months' time, we'll start to be able to really think realistically where our capacity as a partnership and where our priorities lie. So come April 21, again, that'll be the 10 months later, we'll be able to review the progress again. But I think at that point, really being able to report back to the board on what some of our early thinking is around any refresh of outcomes, aims, improvement projects, so bringing a bit more detail to you at that point. And then the plan at the moment then is, when we come to our July meeting in 2021, that we would have a refreshed LOIP for you to approve, sitting alongside, of course, our annual report for 2021, which will really just draw conclusions about the journey we've been over that 12-month period.
Okay, thanks very much for that, Michelle. That was helpful. Sarah, are you happy with that? Did you want to come back with anything? Happy with that response?
No, I'm very happy with that. That pulls together all of the strands that I was questioning. So thank you very much for that.
Okay, that's right. I've got Ken next, and then I've got Gordon.
Thank you, Chair. Can I too welcome Richard's report and commend the good work that's gone in around this. And just to note NESCOL's full support for the actions that are noted in the report where the college can contribute. Gordon, I think, helpfully mentioned the Benny Higgins report that will help shape responses at a national level. There's a few other things I would note that could impact. One is the Cumberford Little report that was called by the Finance Secretary and is around the college sector's contribution. This was pre-COVID, but I think it has implications and a useful roadmap for the college, and it would probably be helpful for colleagues to have sight of that. The second to note is the review that the Minister has asked of the Funding Council in relation to the provision that it funds, so notably colleges and universities. And I hope there would be an opportunity to both input to that review that is to get underway shortly, but obviously to share the outcome of that review process. And the other point to note was in relation to the Enterprise and Skills Board, and there is a subgroup I understand that's looking at actions that might be taken forward, and again that might be a helpful contributor to Richard's report. I did want to note that there's rich data in the report, and I hope that can be shared across the partnership. I think that really does help strengthen our position. The one question I had was around communication strategy in relation to the plan, just to ensure that we've got the right kind of narrative that represents both Aberdeen and the region externally, and I think that would be helpful to underpin the plan as it stands. Thanks.
Thanks, Ken. That's helpful. Do you want to come back on that, Richard?
I just noted Ken's points and thank you. And certainly I think all of those points are important going forward. The first session with the implementation group, we can maybe pick some of that up.
Okay, that's helpful. Thank you. Gordon, I think you're next.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, again, thank you, Richard. Can I just say that very much we do welcome the plan. And actually, personally, I'm grateful to Richard and Michelle for giving us the opportunity to input and look at our own particular input and the way it was actually constructed and pulled together. I think it is fantastic, I think, to have a detailed plan to develop and build on, although I think we all recognise it's going to be a fairly iterative process because, as Richard referenced, I think particularly post-furlough, perhaps if we look at the majority of the economic predictions, they are somewhat gloomy. So, but at least I think it's really great to get ahead of the curve and to have something there that we can build, we can reference, and we can take forward. So, very much welcome and endorse it. I think also good to have this early doors. I think, as has been said by a colleague, I mean, it does pull together things into one place. And again, importantly, I think it uses the existing groups and forums that we've got to drive things forward. I'm interested and agree with Michelle and something I'd mentioned to Michelle and Richard when we had our conversation. I think it is this idea of just ensuring that we're realistic about the resources that are available. And I don't mean that in a negative way. It's just, you know, to make sure that we are realistic when we're looking at each of the actions. What that does, however, of course, is it reinforces the need for a tight partnership, clearly to maximise our input and to avoid duplication at a point where clearly demands will put strains on services, but very much welcome it. Thank you.
Thanks for that, Gordon. And I think a number of those points well made, particularly about that collaborative approach and the pooling of resource, because as we all know, everybody's been impacted across the board as a result of the COVID situation. And as part of the recommendations yesterday at Urgent Business, did set aside, I think it was 141,000 to help us to deliver on the socio-economic rescue plan. But within that plan, there's considerably more than that, I think, will be required probably. But it helps us, I think, to have a bit of money there to push ahead with that. But that collaborative working will be key too. Okay, now I've got a few people on the list, but I think Martin was next and then Paul.
Thank you. Yes, could I ask about the route map? I found that a really helpful, a really useful guide to give us some way forward. But I'd like to ask for some more information about the evidence that's being used to help with remodelling the LOIP for the longer term. The socio-economic rescue plan is to help us to emerge from the lockdown, but the LOIP has got that longer term view. And I was wondering, for example, we have relied upon the population needs assessment, 2018, I think that was. Will there be a need for some deeper analysis into the landscape? There may be long-term trends that are emerging that we're only beginning to discern now. So I'm just wondering if the route plan is going to have quite a radical perspective for changing the LOIP, or just a little bit more detail on how we will respond to that changing socio-economic landscape.
Okay, I think that's a good point, Martin. I'll maybe bring in Michelle. We've obviously got another item on the agenda, that Aberdeen Outcomes Framework, which is about us pooling that data from across the community planning partners, and we hope that that will be used as we move forward to shape up how the community planning partnership reacts to the needs in Aberdeen. But Michelle, I don't know if you want to say a little bit more about how you see that evolving.
Yeah, I mean, I think that will be the key tool that we use in that process, and is why in the route map that's an ongoing theme throughout of the stages, that we continue to connect with that outcomes framework. So the outcomes framework almost has two layers to it. It has the top layer, which is our key indicators that we would look to as a partnership to understand where our performance is, and it's very closely aligned to the 15 stretch outcomes that we've identified. It also drills down into our data observatory, which provides a broader data set and broader indicators that allow us to take a wider assessment of the population. And essentially, the data observatory is our PNE Live. It is the same indicators that we reported on through the population needs assessment, but we, rather than it being that static document, we update that very regularly as the data comes through. So we've still got all of the data there, and we're doing that continuous analysis of the situation. The outcomes framework attempts to kind of rag some of those indicators, so at a glance we can see where anything has changed significantly. So that will really be the key tool. It will evolve over time, especially keen to look at some of the data that Richard was presenting as part of his report to make sure that we've got all of the relevant data within those tools. And I think largely we do. We've already worked with Richard's analysts on that. But yeah, really it should be a one-point stop shop for us to look at all of our data and to draw those conclusions, and of course assess that against the priorities that we've identified to see if there are any changes required.
Thank you. Could I just make a final remark?
Yes, of course.
That's really helpful, because I think that there's a real shake-up happening. We heard about the the increase in universal credit applications right across the city. So everywhere is being impacted in new ways, unexpected ways, and it's good to know that we have this process in place that's going to try and help us and manage our priorities and maybe reorganise our community planning priorities as things begin to settle down. Well, if they settle down, in the longer term view. So thanks for that. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Martin, for that. The next on the list is Paul, and then I've got Murray, and then Jonathan. So Paul, question.
Thanks very much, Chair. I appreciate the opportunity. And Richard, likewise, as others had said, the amount of work that you've put into this is tremendous on all other officers, and it's really helpful for me to see this and how it relates to the wider third sector, both in the work that I do in a day job, and we're partners, but also ACFO. So thanks very much. In particular reference to page 29, 5.11, I see you mentioned a lot of the vulnerable groups that are likely to be impacted hardest. And within that, the BAME groups. But I was just wondering, Richard, within the wider context and the beef of the work that you're doing, has the people that is impacted with no recourse to public funds, is that also included within the wider piece of work that you're doing?
So I think the plan, as you have in front of you, does look at the financial implications of some of the actions. And while there is, a proposed lead for some of the actions, I think the last column to the right refers to the stakeholders that are needed to help support delivery. And that recognises the fact that there may be a requirement to look at wider funding and external sources of funding, or indeed potential repurposing of funding. For example, employability funding through the European Social Fund. There's elements there that may need to be repurposed to support COVID-19 rescue actions. But I think some of the actions in the people plan, for example, does recognise the fact that there is funding out there that may be needed to be drawn in to support some of the beneficiaries that are being targeted.
Thank you. And Chair, can I make a second point? Is that okay?
Yes, of course.
Thanks very much. I think now more than ever, the importance of the third sector is going to be prevalent, and I think it's just given the commitment to every member here that ACFO is very, very willing to be involved as much as possible. And I can see right through the whole thread of the documents today that the third sector is mentioned and the prevalence and importance. So, that's a commitment from Maggie, ACFO, the wider team and the board as well. So please, whatever we can do, we're very willing.
Thank you very much for that, Paul. We appreciate that help. I'm sure Richard will be calling on that commitment. Okay, the next person I've got is Murray and then Jonathan.
Chair, thank you very much, and I'll not rehearse the comments that have been made in terms of the power of work that's been undertaken and the manner in which it's been presented both today and in written format. It's been very, very useful for me. It's just a very minor point, and it's in terms of the composition of the implementation group and the memberships. And I'm more than happy to offer up the services of Police Scotland to contribute to that if it would be required. That's the only point I would make.
Thank you for that. Thank you. Appreciate that very much. Okay, Jonathan, I think you were the last that I've got in my list so far.
Yeah, thank you. Again, echoing what everyone has said, and I think a vital point there from Paul about how we support those that perhaps aren't being, whether it's a case of eligibility or awareness or access to the support mechanisms we currently have, and how we can broaden that out moving ahead. From the other side of that scale, just to raise, and I'm sure this has gone into the thinking of the socioeconomic recovery already, but thinking back to the most recent management group where I'd stepped in for Lavina, who was away at the time, one of the priority items we had there was really focused on ramping up both the frequency but also the data we have behind applications that we're making, either individually as partners or collectively as community planning to external sources. And for this one in particular, they're not there yet, but I think something moving in parallel to this, both from UK and Scottish government, looking at, for example, the business, energy and industrial strategy. Has a report coming out soon, most likely with some UK-wide regional funding streams. Scottish Government looking a bit more hands-on at sector-specific support. So really just to raise now to make sure that, yes, make sure we're led by the outcome, and as long as that takes, then it does. But if at all possible, can we move at a pace that allows us to access these external funding streams rather than limiting ourselves to try and divide further only what we have available locally?
Okay, thanks for that, Jonathan. Lots of nodding going on there. So I think that's it. Okay. Do you have any other questions or comments? Paul, I think your hand's still up, but it's maybe from the last time. Yeah, that's a good one. Okay, I think that's everybody then. Okay. Well, just to extend thanks to all those that have been involved in pulling the plan together. I think from the comments that we've heard, people welcome it. I think we'll look forward to working across the partnership, because I think, again, we've heard everybody saying that they want to make sure that we can deliver on the outcomes within this plan, and indeed help us for that refresh of the local outcome improvement plan in 2021. It's going to be key that we have that collaborative approach. I think we're being asked to agree today that we put the group, and it sits within our community planning structure. And I think by the comments that I've heard, I don't think there's any dissent to that. So I take it we can agree as a committee that that's where it should sit as we move forward. Okay, happy with that. Right, thank you, Richard, and thanks for Michelle. Right, that takes us on now to 3.2, which is the alignment of the private sector corporate social responsibility to the LOIP. Those members that were at the board meeting on February will remember that Michelle gave us a little presentation around what that website is looking like. So we didn't plan to go over that again, but I think Michelle was just going to give us a bit of an update on what's happened since we had the meeting in February.
Yep, just to give you a bit of an update on the development of that. I mean, first of all, I'll just mention that you'll see that this work that we were doing as a partnership has been very timely, and it is a priority action within the socio-economic rescue plan. So we were well organised to be able to pick that work up, which is great. In terms of the progress since the demo in February, just to say that we did do that engagement with the outcome improvement groups and got a good contribution from partners in terms of the ask of businesses. So we've got a lot more content up there than we did in February, giving businesses those specific opportunities to engage with the work of the partnership. So that's great. Hopefully you've had the chance to go into the link that was in the paper, and you will see that we do also have some immediate opportunities in relation to COVID-19. So we felt that that was probably a helpful hook for businesses, because I know that there's a lot of will there within the community at the moment to engage. So they'll have those kind of short-term response to COVID-19 about donating money, food and time, but then they're taken into a broader range of opportunities to connect with the LOIP. And then the additional thing that we had added since the demo in February was just really to emphasise that benefit that employers and businesses will get from being involved with the partnership in terms of the connections they'll have with us, not least making a difference to communities, but also picking up on some of the feedback we'd had from Susan Webb at the last meeting about healthy working lives, opportunities with businesses, and also some of the other benefits that we can offer them. I think we also talked at the last meeting that our plan was to launch this website at an event that we planned to have in May. So obviously that's not been able to go ahead because of the situation we were in. Talking to the chair, what we're thinking now is we'll do a soft launch with your approval today, if your agreement to that. We do have a bit of a captive audience with 10 organisations in Aberdeen that are part of a CSR network. So we have links to them through Business in the Community, which is an organisation we've been working in partnership with on this. So to get some initial feedback from them, do that softer launch. But what we're intending on doing is having an online event in place of the event we had planned in May, so that we can engage with partners over what we've done. So that's the progress since the last meeting.
Thanks very much, Michelle, for that. I think that's helpful for people just to understand how things have moved along. Perhaps I'll maybe just extend my thanks to you and the team for the work that you've put in, because particularly in the current situation, I know that you've been pulled in all different directions, but you've managed to keep going with this. And I think it is timely because, you know, as we mentioned earlier, that pooling of resource is going to be vitally important. And if we can firm up those links with business, I think it's the best idea for us, not just for us, but also for the business community as well, because I think we saw from some of the papers that were with Richard's report, that business charter and things, it's very much about how we can work in collaboration for the benefit of everybody. So I think, you know, thank you for that update. Do we have any questions on that one? Alistair, did you want to? I'm seeing you've got a note in.
I'm quite happy just to just share that I thought it was an excellent piece of work, and having a look through the link to the website, I thought it was really easy to navigate through. Got maybe one suggestion. I know it's going to be resource intensive, but perhaps it would be good if there was a named person rather than just the contact being at Community Planning Aberdeen. If somebody's got a genuine interest, they might feel more comfortable by contacting a recognised position, maybe not the name of somebody, but that's all. That's the only thing I think is really good, and it'd be, I think, really good to see how it goes once we get it live. So well done, Michelle.
Okay, thanks for that. Michelle, did we give any thought to that aspect that Alistair's mentioned there about maybe having a designated kind of contact?
We have a designated community planning account. So essentially that's coming into my team and also a team within Richard's economic development. I think actually an earlier version of the website, we did list individuals' names, but it's actually amazing how quickly that changes. So as Alistair's saying, surprisingly, it is quite resource intensive just to make sure that we keep those names up to date. So whilst we have a record we use, we would of course then liaise with whoever's relevant. We felt like we shouldn't publish that on the website just because it's become dated. But you can certainly look at that again, and I agree it probably does give a more personal touch. So you can look at that.
Okay, thanks. I can understand and the logic behind perhaps not having that designated person. The other thing would be if people go and leave and things. I had an incident just a couple of weeks ago with something else where the person was very frustrated because they couldn't contact that person directly, and you know, because of leave commitments and things. So sometimes it can work the other way as well. Okay, but if we ever think about that, we can obviously monitor it as we move forward. Paul, I think you were next.
Thanks very much, Chair. During my induction yesterday with Alison and Michelle, we actually touched upon this, and I've got a very particular interest in the CSR kind of third sector opportunities through my own work. But ACFO's also got the ACFO affiliates, which is a very successful kind of partnership. So again, speaking to Maggie and the team, they're very, very keen to get involved and support this initiative, because Councillor Lane, you've hit it in the head there. You know, this is absolutely vital that every sector works together, and there's definite opportunity there. So please take that as a commitment from us that we're happy to get involved in, Michelle, and just anything we can do, give us a shout. Thank you.
Thanks for that, Paul. Again, I'm sure Michelle appreciates that commitment, and you know, ACVO have always been good community planning partners. They've always played an active role, and we're delighted that that's going to continue as we move forward. Yes, Jonathan, did you have a question?
Yes, thank you. It's something that may come once the website starts being interacted with, and we have that framework behind our engagement with businesses. I just wondered, in terms of making the sale, as it were, really making that proactive outreach to the businesses, as well as hopefully drawing on those coming to us as community planning that are also interested. When it comes to what are the benefits for you, would we have yet any case studies or examples that we could populate into those individual sections, such as business growth? Here is an example of a local business which has benefited from taking part. Here is a local business whose workforce has been better developed through taking part, to really bring it home and giving what I think all of us always seek out, but particularly businesses might need, that concrete example of, yes, we agree with the theme, we understand the concept, but where is the concrete deliverable behind what you're trying to tell me here? Where is the first-hand local example of the benefits that can be brought by my taking part as a business?
Michelle, have we got any examples of that? I know that we were looking at sort of case studies and things that we could use, weren't we, to working both ways, actually, the help that business could give, but also the benefits that they could get in exchange.
Yeah, I think that's one of the areas that needs to be developed further on the website. So we do have a section, I think it's called Businesses Be Inspired, and that's where we're hoping to share some of those stories. So I think we need to do a bit more work to capture those. And to be able to tell the story and share those examples. So I'm aware that that's probably one of the weaknesses of the website at the moment, but it is that chicken and egg kind of thing as well, that what we would hope to do is work with the businesses that are interested to start to develop some of these kind of, you know, recent case study examples. What we do have on the website is sharing examples of where businesses have contributed already to the work of the partnership. So again, just want to build on that from their perspective. So as I say, the website will continue to evolve, and that's definitely a priority to make sure we improve the content in that area.
Thanks, Michelle. I think Susan might have had some examples through the Healthy Working Lives position. So Susan, yeah.
Yeah, it's just to say at the annual award ceremony, there is always one award holder that stands up and talks through how they've gone about taking forward a particular area in Healthy Working Lives, and that the impact that that has had on their staff and their company. So those are available to share. So if that helps to put some things on to get us started, very happy to ask the team to forward some.
Thanks for that, Susan. I think that would be helpful. I mean, the other aspect, I suppose, Michelle, is that the new group that's being set up has business representatives on it that we haven't, you know, had within our community planning partnership before. So having those links may help us to build on that, and we may be able to get some examples through their organisations and things that would help us, I think. So we'll try and work on that a little bit. Right, I don't have any other hands, I don't think. So we're being asked today to give agreement that we can launch the website, and also that you'll be updated about the plans that we have around that virtual event to make sure that we have as wide participation as we can. So Michelle will undertake to get details of that out once that's firmed up. But are we happy to agree to the launch of that? I'm not seeing any dissent from that, so I'll take it that we can agree to that. So thank you. Okay, that takes us on to item 3.3, which is the summary of progress against the CPA improvement programme and the CPA annual outcome improvement report for 2019-20. Do you want, Michelle? I'm conscious that we're asking you to talk on everything here, so if you want to take it. a breath. But would you like to give us a little bit of an update? I'm sure that members have read through the document, but do you want to give us a wee introduction before we open up for any questions people might have?
Yes, thanks, Councillor Lang. Just briefly to say that there are two parts, obviously, to this report. The first part within the cover report is really focusing on our delivery of the outcome improvement programme that we developed to take that phased approach to the 120 projects we've got in the LOIP. So most of, over 50% of those projects in the LOIP were scheduled to be initiated during this first year of the programme. And although there has been some delay month to month, coming to the year end, we've had 81% of our projects that were due to start this year have started. So that's 54 projects, which is a huge amount of work. And I know a huge amount of work has gone into not only the thinking of that, but bringing the teams together and the collaboration between partners to set out the charters. So I think that that's really positive. And dare I say, I'm not sure there would be a lot of CPPs that would be able to show that kind of volume of work. We're seeing also steady improvement in the charters that are coming forward to the board. So just to give you a bit of background, we have a QA process, as you know, through the management group to make sure that the charters that the board receive are of good quality. And at the last presentation in February, 100% of those project charters were ready for consideration by the board. So I think it shows the journey we've been on as a partnership to learn about the improvement methodology, the training that partners have undertaken, and we're starting to see that improvement come out. And I think also of note is just the recognition in the cover report about that kind of true collaborative leadership that we're seeing across the improvement programme. The council has taken a lead on only 38% of those projects, so the rest of the projects are being led by partners. So I think that's really a fantastic demonstration of the shared commitment of the partnership. The second part of the report is our annual outcome improvement report. So the purpose of that report is to focus on the outcomes of that improvement activity. I think we're still fairly early days in terms of seeing a change to our longer term outcomes. We refreshed the LOIP only last February, but I think there are lots of achievements highlighted in that report that are worthy of being celebrated. Naturally, towards the end of the year, we've been struck by the impact of COVID-19. So what the report does do is just kind of tie in with the socio-economic rescue plan about the priorities that we see going forward into this new year.
Okay, thanks very much for that, Michelle. And just on a couple of points that you raised there, I mean, I think it is very pleasing to see that collaborative approach that has built up over time, because I remember when I first came into the role, the council really were driving everything. They were leading on all of the different groups and various things. So, I mean, it is a testament to how partners have really picked up the ball and you know, come into that perspective. So from my position, I think that's a really pleasing place that we're in. I know around that training aspect as well, and that improvement methodology to begin with was quite alien to a number of organisations, but again, because of the leadership from members of the board and indeed at that management level, we've seen a real drive within organisations to get people trained and feeling more confident in its use. And I think we're reaping the benefits of that. You know, the work that's going on behind the scenes, quite often when it comes to the board, sometimes we have a bit of frustrations if you know, the improvement work maybe isn't quite on track where we expect it to be. But I think when you've highlighted there the numbers of projects that are actually up and running and working, you know, I would agree with you that if you go throughout Scotland, you would be hard pushed to find a community planning partnership that is working as well as ours, if I'm honest. And I think that is a testament to the partnership working that we have, because I don't think that is replicated throughout Scotland. I think we're very fortunate in the, you know, the how people work together here. And I'm, as the chair of the board, very thankful to everybody for the work that they've done to bring their organisations, you know, into the partnership, playing the full role. So I certainly appreciate that, and the work that's done by yourself and the team to coordinate all that and provide us with the information. I think the report, again, there's some really good information in there and some pleasing results that it showed that we were making that improvement that we need to in order to achieve the outcomes. The COVID-19 situation hit us in the last few weeks, so we won't see the full impact of that, and I'm sure it will. There'll be certain areas there that actually there'll be improvements around that environmental piece and the reduction in pollution and things, and the more active travel. But there'll also be those other areas around the poverty aspects where it's going to set us back. But it's about how we adjust as a partnership to deal with that, and moving forward will be the important thing. But I think having that before us, it shows that the work that has gone on behind the scenes was making a difference, and we just need to have commitment to that moving forward to ensure that we can deal with the challenges that COVID has thrown up for us, and undoubtedly for other places as well. So sorry, I've gone on a bit there, but that's the privilege when you're the chair. You're allowed to do the speaking without putting your hand up. So I'll maybe open up for questions if anybody's got any questions or comments that they would like to make on the report and the covering report that we have. I'm not seeing anybody indicating. Okay, well, yes. I thought, Jonathan, don't let me down. You've put in there as always. That's why I had a bit of a lull there. I couldn't believe you were going to let that go without coming in. So yeah.
Yes, I think it's great to have that overview, and I can already see how that data lends itself to being more quickly moving, more responsive, able to utilize it quicker, connecting with assets we have like the dashboard, to have that in a live environment. I wondered if, extra piece of work, not to give it to everybody, but as we're looking ahead, particularly around, for example, the rescue plan, and we have that review of which projects are still needed, what are the priorities that they have, the perennial issue almost that we come up against on a less positive note is trying to, I think, understand what might be preventing a project either from getting to the point of approval, or taking the next step, or expanding a bit further, or getting to the target it's set itself. If it would be helpful to have that similarly broad overview of, is it because of finance? Is it resource? Is it staff capacity? Is it difficulty engaging with partners? Is it because we need people around the table who aren't there? Is it because the need is different than we thought it might be when we came up with the idea? I know that all those things are quite likely being collated on an individual project level, but I wonder if looking ahead, hopefully we won't need it, but anticipating any barriers there might be for us getting where we want to be as a city, if it would be helpful for, particularly for us, perhaps more so the management group, to have that broad overview of where are the issues coming from, and therefore, if any intervention, if any further support, if indeed any external conversations are helpful for us as the board, and again, the management group, to know where those areas are, rather than the kind of traditional cycle of 4 to 6 months later, eventually someone tells us what the issue was. How do we make that quicker so that we can take action on improving it quicker?
Thanks for that, Jonathan. I think, as you've mentioned there, that there will be a range of reasons why certain projects might not come forward at the pace that we expected. And as you've mentioned, I think we would look at those, we tend to look at them on an individual basis, but I don't know, Michelle, whether you think there's any benefit of us looking at it on a more collective basis, or whether we could do that, just analyse.
We can certainly look at that when we are kind of refreshing that CPA improvement programme. I know that as chair of the management group, Angela had already been leading that group in a way that we were doing action learning sets. So we were already starting to delve into some of those issues and try and come up with solutions together. I guess what we don't want to do is put together a paper that states all these barriers that we know do exist. And I think that the purpose of that workshop approach was to try and get solutions to that. So I guess, although not as handy to do online, that sort of work will continue so that we can overcome those barriers.
That seems a reasonable approach, I think, what you've suggested there. Are you happy with that, Jonathan?
Yeah, I think that sounds good. And as Michelle has said, we're having to look at more adaptable and dynamic ways of working. So rather than having a set way of addressing it as and when needed, but if we're aware of it now, I'm sure that we'll have the ability and the ambition to do that as it's required. Okay,
super. Right, I don't see any other hands. So are we happy to move the recommendations, which is to approve the outcome improvement report and note that we're going to have an easy to read version. You'll be aware that we've done that on occasions, and I think it's a good thing for us for that wider kind of publicity of what's happening within the partnership. It's always good to have that. And we're also just noting that we will have that refresh of the LOIP in 2021, as we've mentioned, as we've discussed some of the papers. So we're happy to agree that?
Yes, thanks.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Right, that takes us on now to 3.4, which was the Aberdeen Outcomes Framework that we touched on earlier. Again, Michelle, you demonstrated this at the February committee meeting, but I think you wanted to just maybe give us a quick update on what's occurred since then, and if anybody had any questions, you were going to take that.
Yeah, just to say that the link that you've been set reflects the feedback that we received from the outcome improvement groups and partners following the workshop we held, and we got good attendance on that. So that is reflected in the version that you're seeing. Again, it will evolve over time as we identify new data sets that we would want to include in there. But as I explained earlier, it will be kept with the latest data that's published. So we're not relying on a kind of static document, that we will always have sight of that data that's out there, and it'll allow us to do that horizon scanning and understand if there's any emerging issues that we're not tackling either through our socio-economic rescue plan or our LOIP. We did get some feedback at the last meeting when I did the demo, just to make you aware that we will continue to work on. There was something that we talked about, the storytelling behind the data. I think the annual report does attempt to do that at the year end, and kind of marries up the improvement activity we've been taking forward with that data. But we've also got plans to just make it a wee bit more user friendly with the use of infographics and that whole piece about maybe having some short video clips just to provide that human touch to the data. So that's something that we will work on. And the other area is around the research piece, that kind of function of the website that supports research for an improvement project. So still have plans in place to work with the university and public health and with other national partners such as the Improvement Service, so that we can really improve the capability of that on the webpage.
Okay, thanks for that, Michelle. That's helpful to get that update. Any questions or comments on the framework? Not seeing any. No. Okay, thanks for that, Michelle. I think we've been asked to approve the publication of the framework, and we're requesting that partners engage in discussions about how the framework can be supported by all partners as it develops and embeds. So I take it the committee's happy to agree that. Yeah. Okay. Right, that takes us on to 3.5, which is our community planning budget for 2021. again, Michelle, I don't know if you need to say anything around this. I think it's pretty self-explanatory. Does anybody have any questions or comments on it? Not seeing any hands. Okay, can I take it then that we are happy to approve the recommendations as they appear on 179, which is just to approve the budget and
could I add in just
yes,
for noting?
Yes.
I think it's probably one of those copy and pastes with an old document updated for for current purposes. I think it's probably been here for a couple of years now, where it says that ACVO is provided with the funding to develop the Civic Forum. I would say first and foremost, of course, we enjoy a very close working relationship with ACVO. However, ACVO haven't been paid to do anything for the Civic Forum for a number of years. The website is maintained out of the budget that we have. We had a data delivery plan in terms of technology, which we've now procured. And the remaining budget we have, essentially, especially with this pandemic going on, we're going to make last as soon as possible. However, there is no cost to our meetings. We gratefully are able to make use of the townhouse and some other venues. So thank you to the council and other partners for that. But just for clarity, that money is held by ACVO for the Civic Forum, as far as I know. And also, as far as I know, there are no recurring costs to the Civic Forum other than the website. And again, close working relationship with ACVO, but they haven't been, as far as I know, paid to do anything for the Civic Forum for a number of years now, which is fine. It's not that they should be, just for accuracy in that budget.
Okay, Jonathan, I did, it's funny because I remembered that we may have had a similar discussion previously, and I did raise with officers around this, but Michelle, I think your understanding was that that money was going there, but I don't know whether we...
I wonder, is the point you're making, Jonathan, that funding is no longer provided to ACVO, but that they hold the remainder of the funding they'd received previously for you? So whilst there's been no new allocation, you still have that pot of almost £4,000 that you can draw from should you need anything?
Yeah, so I think at the moment, essentially, ACVO are gratefully hosting that money in their account for the Civic Forum as awarded by Community Planning. But the relationship that was there maybe 4 years ago now in terms of development work, ACVO being paid to provide a service to the Civic Forum is no longer the case. The outcome of that was that we become self-sufficient. We're now there and have been for a number of years. So, you know, they're not paid to give us a certain amount of hours or to host meetings or to minute meetings or to do admin or to host our website. We do all of that voluntarily.
Okay, Michelle, I notice that Paul has indicated, so I don't know if Paul's maybe got some clarity.
Thanks very much, Chair. I recall a couple of years ago there was a conversation around the support given to the Civic Forum, but also the costs that ACVO were incurring from the council in relation to the website. So what I'll do is, if it's okay with yourself, Michelle and Councillor Lane, I'll speak to Maggie just for absolute clarity and what the breakdown is and if there is still 4,000 and how that can be utilised, and or if it is at this point. So if that's okay with you, I'll come back to you on that.
I think that would seem a sensible way forward, Paul, if you could just get clarity around that. And what we could propose is we approve the budget today, pending clarity around that 3,974, I think it is, that's shown in the account there. And then we can perhaps get an update on that for the next meeting. Would that be the way forward? Yeah, happy with that? Sorry, I'm just looking at somebody's. Yes, okay, Jonathan's happy as well. Jonathan's hand's not working, so I have to keep flicking back and forth to the notes on the chat. So, okay, if everybody's happy, we can approve that. Now that takes us to 4.1, which is the date of the next meeting, which is down for the 16th of September at 2 p.m. So hopefully that's suitable for everybody. Now, I mean, that takes us to the end of the meeting. I had intended at this point to say a few words about Campbell, because it would have been Campbell's last meeting with us today, because he's due to go off and enjoy, hopefully, a very happy retirement from Police Scotland. Unfortunately, he's not been able to make it today. We're delighted that Murray's been able to come in his place, but I thought it was important that we just said a few words about Campbell, because the contribution that he's made to the Community Planning Partnership has been immense, I have to say, in the time that he's been here. Now, I did make some inquiries. Campbell plays his cards pretty close to his chest, if I'm honest with you. So I did make a few inquiries from his colleagues just about, his background and what his police career had looked like. And so they kindly sent me some of that information. And I think, I'd like to share some of that with you today, because I think it highlights how that kind of collaborative working has been a thread throughout his career, if I'm honest. And, so what we saw at the Community Planning Board was really just an extension of what went on in his everyday life as well. So he started, and I did know this because I spent an evening with him at a function where he actually told me that he had worked in the North Sea as a trawler skipper before he joined the police service. So it wasn't actually until October 1990 that he stepped forward to Grampian Police. And he was initially posted, I believe, to serve in Peterhead, which was the community he lived in with his family. But he quickly rose through the ranks in predominantly criminal investigation division roles. And making communities safer has always been a key theme for Campbell's philosophy, and he led teams tackling the impact of organised crime groups from elsewhere in the UK on the communities of the North East. And it's been an area of business which he's continued to drive right up until today. It was during this time that the benefits of the truly collaborative working at a strategic level as well as a tactical one were highlighted to him, and he's been a strong advocate of that collaboration ever since. And as head of the Development and Governance Unit at Grampian Police, he devised and implemented the first truly collaborative strategic business assessment, which was a first for any Scottish police force. And in 2009, as Detective Superintendent, Campbell led the investigation into the loss of the Bond Super Puma helicopter off the coast of Crimond, which resulted in the loss of all 16 passengers and crew. And I think it's safe to say that his professionalism and that of his team, who he selected to work under him during that harrowing and complex investigation, were commended upon frequently and formally recorded during the subsequent fatal accident inquiry. And it was through that investigation that Campbell's compassion went above and beyond what was expected and indeed required of him. And he ensured he visited every grieving family, providing updates on the investigation and providing reassurance and confidence that everything was being done to establish the circumstances which had led to the tragic event. And he was later to pass on his experience and the strategies to his SIOs who were dealing with the loss of the CHC helicopter off Sombra in 2013 and the loss of the Police Scotland helicopter in Glasgow later the same year. In 2014, Campbell was temporarily promoted to the rank of Assistant Chief Constable for local policing North, covered the former force areas of Tayside, Grampian and Highland and Islands, before moving to his current role of Divisional Commander, North East Division. So I think when we've laid that out, I think we can really see that a key theme of Campbell's policing career has been the manner in which he's embraced and promoted the outcomes of the Christie report. And we talked about that earlier in a number of the reports. And it's that approach about delivery of public services through true collaboration between all public service organisations and the effective community planning. So that has been a thread throughout his career. And I have to say it's certainly shown through in the work that he's done as part of the Community Planning Partnership. I think he joined the board back in 2016, and I have to say, right from that very second he set foot into the Town's House, he has been a tremendous support to me as the chair, both personally and in the leadership role that I've had as leading up the Community Planning Board. And his commitment to, you know, we mentioned earlier about partners coming in and really taking ownership of things within the Community Planning Partnership. And Campbell certainly did that. And he did it not just with words, he did it with committing resource to the partnership, whether it be staffing resource or indeed financial support when budgets allowed. He also made sure that the local outcome improvement plan was very much embedded within the local police plan. And I think we all realise that if the Community Planning Partnership is to have maximum effect, we need to make sure that our single organisations are also reflecting that in the policies and strategies that we bring through. And he's certainly done that to a very high degree. So I just wanted to extend my great thanks to him and on behalf of the board, because I'm sure everybody shares that sentiment, for all the work that he's done in his time with the Community Planning Partnership and indeed with Police Scotland, and wish him well in his retirement. I think he's earned it. I'm sure he'll go on. I don't think he'll be putting his feet up because he's not that type of person, but I'm sure he'll go on and continue working within the community as well. So it was just to really say that. I'm sorry that he wasn't here today to hear it personally, but maybe Murray, you can pass that on, our thanks to him for all the work that he's done. He'll be sorely missed, but we appreciate everything he's done as part of the Community Planning Partnership. So Murray, I think you've raised your hand. You maybe want to come in and just say a few words.
Chair, thank you very much, and thank you for the heartfelt comments, which I will certainly make sure are passed back to Mr. Thompson. And I think it will be shared by many colleagues, friends, partners, and those that have come to have contact with Campbell over the years. You know, he is a very proud police officer, proud leader, and rightly so. But as those that know Campbell very well, he's also a very proud husband, father, and grandfather. And he goes with our absolute best wishes. I'm sure there will be every opportunity for individuals to mark the occasion between now and when he actually goes. But thank you very much for the very kind words, and I'll ensure that they are passed back to him.
Thanks very much for that, Murray. Okay, that does finish the meeting. Thanks everybody for your attendance today. I think that's been really useful for us to get together despite the circumstances that we're all living through at the moment. I take heart from you know, the commitment of community planning partners. I think it can only be good for Aberdeen, that work that we've built up to date. If we can continue to progress with that, I think it will help us to come through this rescue phase and into that recovery period as well. So thanks for your attendance and look forward to seeing you all in September. Okay, thanks folks. Bye for now.
Thank you.